they're smarter. Now, I didn't say they had more wisdom. There is a big difference. But they're smarter. And that's because our schools and our school system and our communities have exposed them to more. But it's really what it's all about. And then I'll end with this. Bishop mentioned all means all, and that goes to skill versus will. Are we willing to educate every child? Someone said to me one time, and I think they're right, the issue in South Carolina, and I only use South Carolina, is not how we, is really how we educate poor children. We're educating middle class and upper and rich children very well in this state. The question is, how do we educate poor children? That's really what it boils down to, because there are different challenges. I love the discussion about the EFA formula. So let me give you an example about how that formula can be somewhat misleading. My good friend, Ms. Mackey here, is in Richland 2. I'm in Richland 1. And if you just ask people in this room, which one is the rich district and which one is the poor district, and my assumption is they would say that Richland 2 is richer. But the truth of the matter is, if you take the EFA formula, Richland 2 is considered the poor district, and Richland 1 is considered the rich district. Even though if you take a look at free and reduced lunch students, you're going to find that it's changing, but over time, Richland 1 has had a higher free and reduced lunch population. But the state formula considers Richland 1 a rich district, therefore under the EFA formula, we get less funding because we're getting funding from the local level. I'll just end with this other comment. If you look, and I agree with Kevin. Kevin is right. It's about educating kids, and we've got to get out of the mindset that the only place that they can be educated is in a particular type of school. And we as a state, as South Carolinians, ought to be committed to educating all children. Yes. Now, I do think that there's some differences, Sister Weaver. I don't agree with vouchers, and I don't agree with tuition tax credits. I think if you want a private education, you ought to pay for it privately. But I think if you want a public education, the state funds ought to take care of that. And we should commit to that. So whether they want to go here, there, or anywhere else, then that's fine. And so that is the key. Are we willing to do what it takes? My good friend and fraternity brother Kay Patterson used to tell us all the time. He said, Judy, he would say that sometimes a reporter would interview him, and those of you that know Kay Patterson know that he was a little bit of an agitator. He didn't have any problems doing that. And so sometimes reporters would ask him, well, Senator, tell me, what is it that you want? What is it that you and your people want? And Kay would say, we want the same thing you want. You want good schools? We want good schools. You want good roads? We want good roads. You want a quality job? We want a quality job. And so we've got to stop separating and think that one community wants one thing versus and another community wants another thing. We all want the same thing, and our children deserve it. There are a lot of things that we disagree on sometimes in life. But the thing that we do agree on is educating our children, and we ought to do it, and we ought to do it well. And test scores, Judy, are a part of it. It's not all of it. Mm-hmm. A school or a child's future should not be based on a given day or a given test. It should be based on multiple things, the teacher's recommendation. Someone asked a question earlier about being in AAP. One of the things that we have in the district was if a parent asked for their child to be in AAP, we gave them an opportunity. We will give them that opportunity. And they have to, once they get there, they have to be able to perform, to be able to stay there. So there are things that we've got to stop doing and start doing to make sure that all of our children are a success. And Brother Doge, I'll just end with this. When we talk about this issue of diversity, let's change the conversation and create inclusion. Let's talk about inclusion. We're diverse. We're a diverse state. Most of our schools and most of our districts are diverse. But someone said it earlier, when you start to look at certain classes, they're not as diverse as that school might lead itself to be. So we ought to be about inclusion versus diversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. I appreciate that. We're going to have closing remarks briefly from each of our panelists. And Mr. Ford's remarks were such a great segue because I think so many people are under the misconception that everybody has the same opportunities. Everybody has access to the same thing. And Ben, you can back me up. I don't know if you have other statistics readily available, but in preparing for the panel, and to the research that you compiled, I learned that a quarter of the schools with the highest percentage of Black and Latino students don't even offer Algebra 2. So if you don't even offer it, how is that access to that opportunity? A third of those schools did not offer chemistry. So the numbers are available. And again, compiling the final questions from our audience, asking what are our action steps moving forward? How do our schools need to change in the way that we operate, whether it's the school calendar or the way we engage with parents? And what do we do to change the way that our children think about race, or to bring them up to let them know that the shade of your skin should not impact your access to opportunity? And if you guys can just share your closing thoughts with your action steps that you would like to charge us with moving forward. Ellen, we'll start with you.
I saw a documentary recently called We the Parents, and one of the most stunning quotes that I walked away from was a single mom who had been given the opportunity to send her child to a charter school that had just opened in their neighborhood. And the direct quote from her was, "I felt powerful. I felt like one of them." And I really think that empowering parents is where it all starts. And so what we've done as an organization is put together a website called mysceducation.org. And on there we have a catalog that lists all of the different options that are currently available to students in South Carolina. The goal is to give parents a resource to understand how a family like them has used whatever that option is, and then gives them links to find out how they can learn more about whether that option may be right for them or their child. And you talk about how to close the opportunity gap. I think we are on the edge of a digital revolution in education. When you think about what you can do with long distance learning now, course access, to compensate for those schools that may not have an Algebra 2 program. There are a lot of things that if we get the funding discussion correct, we can do to unleash opportunity like we have never seen in this state for every student.
Thank you very much. Let's jump down to John Dozier here. We'll mix it up a little bit for the closing comments.
See, I was ready for everybody else.
I know. You gotta stay on your toes.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Well, I want to thank Andrew Baskins and the Community Relations Council for hosting this series of conversations. Solutions are complex because the problem is complex. And to that end, I think, we need to think about coalitions of the willing and bring people together who have an interest in making a difference. Represented here are folks from the faith community, folks from the museum community, obviously educators. We're all here and we're all very interested in the same thing. Again, I don't think to say that funding is the solution and that's the only way we can solve this problem is a bit of a pipe dream, because where are we going to get money from? We need roads, we need all these other things, we need health care. But the point I'm making is, again, Gail mentioned earlier that education is not just simply what happens in that 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock space. It's what happens in the after-school programs. It's what happens on Sunday when families go to church. It's what happens when children get home, and eliminating the digital divide so that they have access to information. And it's all of that encompasses education. And it's important for us to, again, come together as a community to think about how we provide all of that for the least of us.
For the least of these. Let's go down to Mr. Ferrello. You've talked about eloquently about some of the issues that we're facing, and also about the strategy as we're moving forward and the legislature takes up this issue, but what would you like to add in terms of action steps moving forward?
Well, there'll be a very specific set of objectives offered by this committee that's had 5 or 6 hearings across the state in the poverty districts that deal with education. So I've alluded to them. I've read some of the subcommittee reports. It's the most comprehensive stuff to come out of state government in many years. Molly Spearman is part of it. There's unity in the brain power. Dr. Terry Peterson, who was the chief of staff to Governor Riley, is basically doing the drafting of it. 8 years as assistant in the State House and 8 years as Secretary of Education. And it's terrific. And it's the most exciting stuff I've read about South Carolina's educational system in a generation.
Great.
And we've gone through a generation of education fashion in the state that's demoralized our teachers, demoralized our parents, and some of our students. And it's helped to diminish the interest in many young people in going into education. So I have asked every year, I've been asked to speak to the South Carolina, to the Carolina scholars, come visiting to all the schools. These are rising juniors and seniors, and trying, not yet making their decisions about where to go to school. And they're the brightest of their, and it's a mixed group. And I've asked them every year, how many of you are thinking about becoming teachers? And until about 3 years ago, about a third. In the last 3 years, 0.
Wow.
Now that is an indictment of where we have come as a state. We have lost the will. I believe it was Vince Ford who said, "Will," used the word will. We have lost the will to make for change. But I do believe we are at a pivot point, and I'm very optimistic about it. Now, by the way, I went to a Presbyterian church on Sunday to hear a speaker from Mississippi who came to talk about race and reconciliation. And he said he grew up in Charleston, as I did. And we had met once before, had a warm embrace. And he said something that I want to share with all of you here. I went back to Charleston today for another funeral of a dear friend's mother. And I got to see a lot of my old Charleston friends, black and white, very integrated in a funeral and burial. And this man said, in that First Presbyterian Church on Sunday, and I wrote it down, I put it in prepared remarks that you didn't allow me.
You can offer them
Nothing
down.
short of amazing grace, that the proximity to suffering creates the possibility of empathy.
Say that one more time.
The proximity to suffering creates the possibility of empathy. I think our governor went to Charleston, went to 9 funerals, and never had been through an African-American service before, well, you bet. Not through 9 funerals. And she saw the compassion, the support of the community, the unity, and the sense of forgiveness, which is unbelievable. From what they felt in those difficult